welcome back to the channel. You can see we've got the garage cleaned up a little bit. We've kind of done a lot of work. We've put some lights up. We should have some pretty decent lighting. Hopefully you can hear us pretty well as well. Today, what are we working on?
Today we're going to work on my Suzuki Boulevard. It's an '08, and it sat for 3 years, and the clutch froze up. So, among other things, we have a battery to change and change the oil at the same time. But we're going to get everything accomplished here and get this clutch all going. I would take it for a drive after this is all over, but it's raining out, so it'll probably just get a bath today.
And don't you need tires?
I do need to get tires. I have to take it to a dealership or somewhere because I'm not changing tires. They're spoked. I'm not doing it. After we get that, we have to have it inspected so I can re-license it. It hasn't been licensed in 3 years. So we're going to get this all accomplished today. And I did purchase the clutch, the gasket, the oil filter, springs, a bunch of other parts, and we got them here on the table in front of us.
Well, what parts are we looking at here? What is this?
Well, this is the gasket that comes with it. This is a Suzuki original gasket that I purchased. I did buy everything from Suzuki. I do know it's an 803cc motor on it. However, I looked online and I couldn't figure out how to find the right. I was afraid of getting the wrong part.
So you went to the Suzuki dealership.
So I went to a Suzuki dealership here, and I said, "This is what I need." The gentleman was nice. He figured it all out exactly what I needed, and I purchased everything. Wasn't actually that expensive at all as I thought, but they are OEM parts.
So we got some springs. What are springs for?
The springs are actually to separate the clutch so you can actually shift. When you pull your clutch lever in, it pulls it apart so the discs can spin freely. Because you have a steel plate and then you have a clutch plate.
Alright, and then what is this guy? What kind of filter?
That is an oil filter, and it actually goes
for an oil change?
It's just for an oil change.
Okay.
Because these are a wet clutch, and with a wet clutch, the engine oil actually is what lubricates this.
Alright, so this is the steel plate, right?
This is a steel plate. With the cogs on the inside here, there is a hub, and that hub is actually connected to your crankshaft. When your motor is running, that makes those spin. Whenever you pull your clutch in, these will all be spinning at the same time. If it's in neutral, they'll all.
You call this the friction plate, right?
This would be the friction plate. They have cogs on the outside, so these actually would connect to your drive shaft or your drivetrain. These are an oil or a wet clutch is what they would call this. With that wet clutch, whenever you disengage your clutch and you pull it in, these plates are spinning with the motor. These plates would go to your rear axle, rear drive, and what happens when you pull it apart, they give it enough room and separate it out to the point where the disc or the friction plates stop turning, and that's what disengages your rear wheel.
So we're doing a battery, and this is the oil for the oil change, obviously.
Correct.
And it being a wet clutch.
And being wet clutch.
All right.
It hasn't had an oil change in 3 years, so it needs one anyway.
So the first step, we got to get these soaking in oil?
They need to soak probably about 30 minutes in some oil just to soften them up and make them all...
And in the meantime, we can start pulling stuff apart, right?
Yes, we could.
Let's do it. All right, so what kind of oil we got here? Castrol...
It's actually 10W40 motorcycle oil.
Look at that.
I think it's because it's a wet clutch is the reason why. It does literally say motorcycle oil right on it.
So why are we soaking this one and not this guy?
This one here is a steel plate, and it just has dimples in it to release the friction or something. I don't know. It's for a friction bond or something so the actual thing will grab. And this one here, if you can see on here, and I don't know how close I can get to the camera on this, you can actually, it looks more like a cork material.
Yeah, it feels like it too.
It does kind of feel like it too. It does have serrations in it
like
across.
Really dense cork.
Yeah, it's a really dense. I mean, I'm not going to poke my fingernail in. I don't want to ruin it, but
yeah.
I would assume that just is like not asbestos, but it could be something similar to it. But it's just a really hard cork-like substance. They need to be pre-soaked. That lets them expand a little bit. If we put these in dry, I do know for a fact that you put these in dry and you crank that motor up and you pull that clutch in, it'll just disintegrate from what I was told.
Nice.
So we're going to pre-soak these for about 30 minutes at least. And I may have to use some of the oil out of this, so we're trying to keep it as clean as possible.
All the way to the top?
Just fill her up. It needs to soak. Once we pull these apart a little bit, we'll get some oil on the outside too. And I'm going to separate them. And we're going to pull them apart and get a little bit of oil in between them. That way they're not only soaking, and I'm not going to leave them stacked perfectly like this. I'm going to kind of shift them around once he gets them filled up. So I know they're completely 100% covered. Now we can literally just kind of pull each individual one apart. Yeah. Okay. See, there was that little bond there. It did not want to come apart. The dry material was holding it on the other side. So just separate each one of them. Make sure you're getting the oil coverage on all sides. I don't remember the count of these plates. There's here,
a bunch of them.
We could count them real quick. Kind of pull them up. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then there's one that you might be able to see a difference. There's a 7th one. Wow. This is a kind of a mess. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see this or not. But if you look at the gap, the distance between the thickness of this plate on the right,
our right,
I guess
your left.
our right, your left, and the thickness of the plate on your right, they're different. I believe this plate is the first plate to go on. That's why I've staged them in this way. So literally it's going to be the very first plate I pull out of this oil substance. Once that soaks, well, in the meantime, we're going to continue working on the motorcycle, get it apart, get the old clutch out, get the gasket material replaced, get it all done. So we'll see you here in a minute when we get set up for that. Thank you.
All right, so what's the first thing we're working on?
First thing we need to do is drain the oil, because it is being a wet clutch. That wet clutch has oil in it. So let's get that oil filter loose, and I have to use this pan because my regular oil pan will not fit under a motorcycle and I don't have a lift. So this is what we get. For that.
What size do you think that is?
We have 15 or 16. Let's do that. One size too big. There's the oil. We found it, and I found a cobweb.
Ew. That oil on the wrench, that just keeps it from rusting.
Yeah, yep, just keeps her nice and clean. Gives it that good finish, good sheen. And I'm going to stand it up just a little bit here so we can make sure we get all the oil out of it.
No, you're still coming pretty heavy.
Yeah. Should be.
There's a lot of oil in there.
That's 3.6 quarts.
I think you said 4. No, you're right.
3.6 is what the dealership said. Several people I listened to online said it was 3.7, but 0.1, I don't know.
What's 0.1 of a quart?
Yeah, I mean, I gotta buy 4 quarts to get the 3.6, so I'm good.
Does it have a dipstick like a car?
It does not. It has a little viewer on the same case that your clutch is in. That, and this is the tricky part. You have to stand the motorcycle up straight, and then it says has an add mark, and the oil has to be above that add to the full line. It's a visual one. I don't understand why they did that, but yeah. How are we doing?
We're still dribbling.
Still dribbling.
A steady dribble.
That's a lot more oil than I thought there was going to fill in that pan.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's a drip now.
Drip now? Okay. I'm going to set it down. All right. Grab the oil filter.
Going back on with the plug.
Yeah, we're gonna put the oil plug and we're put the oil filter back in the motorcycle. Mostly so I don't forget to put them in and pour a quart of oil on the ground.
I did that on my car one time. Just started pouring oil all over the ground. About 4 quarts into it, too.
Oh, nothing like a little bit of oil residue, eh? Okay, the new filter, we've already got it. It's been pre-oiled, like you would on any other oil change. You're going to put a little bit of oil on there. That helps this bond to the little metal surface on here and keep it sealed.
Then on the threads, just to help that go on
Yeah, and
better.
the threads, it does help it thread on better, and you can't cross-thread it that way. Well, you can, but it's a lot harder to do so. Okay. And like anything, you get that hand tight, and then you give it like a quarter or half turn, something like that. Okay.
All right, what's next?
Next, we're going to remove the 2 bolts that hold the header on, and then there's a squeeze clamp down here at the bottom that this pipe slides into where the catalytic converter and this crossover pipe is. We're going to loosen that up just to give us some room. Pull these 2 out. We should be able to rock it forward and pull it out. Once that's removed, that'll give us access to the screws all the way back to here. And then there's a little, I guess it's metal, I thought it was plastic, cover. It has 3 bolts in it. I don't need to take it out. I just need to shift it back because there's one more bolt way down here behind this cover that I don't know how you'd get to it otherwise. So we're going to go ahead and pull these apart and get started on this portion with the exhaust.
Set of the neutral block. Oh, by the way, we bought some new tools.
$2,500 for a low price of $1,000. Not a bad deal.
What he means is $2,500 worth of tools that we only paid $1,100 for.
We helped out a friend that accidentally got 2. Plus, we needed tools. Well, those 2 didn't come out as bad as I thought they would be in here since '08. And heated every day. Okay. Set that to the side. Now we need to address the squeeze clamp portion of the back portion. And I think that was... That one is a 12 millimeter, I believe. Rotate a little bit, pull it back, brake pedal, aha, there we go, one exhaust off. Big old pipe at the top goes into a little tiny pipe at the back. Okay, so we can get all these screws out here now, except for, like I said, this one down here. So what we're going to do is remove these 3 screws. There's 2 here, and there's one back down underneath below the exhaust. And I believe that's the same 4 millimeter Allen wrench that took the air cleaner off. And again, we're going to cheat.
You see what I'm doing?
Broke loose. Get in there. Broke loose. Now this one I can get on with an Allen wrench. Where I can see. So, now that we're done with that portion, we're going to start removing the case screws all the way around it. This is a good idea. I actually stole this from another gentleman. We did this wrong the first time. It was upside down and backwards, but we got it.
Fail.
I had to write fail on it because I just said, here, draw this out real quick, and we drew it out and poked the holes in it, and then we walked over here, and yes, somebody else pointed this out to me. It turns out it was upside down and backwards, so we lined it up. The reason I'm doing this is if you look at the distance between the case and the head of this bolt, these two, and actually this one here, they're the same length. Now you look at the next one, that's about an inch longer. That one may be about a 1/4 inch longer. So you're going to have different lengths on a lot of these bolts, and they have to go in the same hole. So by doing this with our gasket, we can literally say, okay, we take that out, we put it here, that one I put it here. When we're all done and we set this aside, we come back to put them back in. I pull from here, put here. I don't have to worry about I put the wrong bolt in the wrong hole. So that's something I would probably make. I know this isn't a great drawing. I didn't have a Sharpie, I had a pencil. Are out. They're put on our cardboard so we know where they go when you put them back in the correct spot. That was a lot easier than I anticipated coming off, but like I said, I heard the popping earlier when we were breaking it free. That actually came off way easier than I anticipated to come off. But our gasket actually looks pretty good, but like I said, there's only like 20,000 miles on it. The inside of this case is beautiful, clean. So we're going to set this aside. We'll take this old gasket off. Yeah,
we can take it off the bench.
Yeah, it looks like it'll come off pretty simply. Mind you, show that one more time. There are like guide bushings to go on. These will fall out. Be careful not to lose those. So now what we do, this is a clutch. You can actually see the friction plate teeth around the outside of this basket, and then the other steel plates that are in between each one of them, and we can actually verify that thicker one is the very last one, which would be the first one going in when we go to put everything back together. So we're going to remove these 4 bolts. These actually have covers on them, and the springs are behind these bolts, so they don't have to worry. They're all the same length. We'll just have to remove one at a time, and since they're spring loaded, I would probably kind of do like you do with the car. Take these 2 and then these 2. Gasket material from around the outside of this case and get it clean, and then we'll double check that the gasket material's all removed. Wow, yeah, that's not gonna be good.
Well, everything came apart pretty easy though.
Yeah, everything came apart real easy. This came off the case real easy.
But when you were pulling this off, you could see that they were stuck together.
Yeah, they were stuck together initially.
They seem to be coming apart though.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder if these metal plates will come apart though. Yeah.
Some of them are. Just go through each one of them. I bet you you'll see something that's like bonded really well. Something's got to be stuck. And that is not coming off for good.
That's what we get this for.
Yeah, exactly. down to scraping. And like I said, these little, I guess guide pins, whatever you want to call them, they will fall out. So try not to lose them. I'm going to set them in here since they're covered in oil.
Alright, so we got that all cleaned off. What's the next step?
Well, the next step is to put our guide pins back in the two spots that would actually help set this on to the motor. And then we'll put our gasket on it and have it ready and set aside. We'll set it over here next to the motorcycle to pick it up and place it on once we get the clutch all reassembled. We'll get rid of our old plates and then clean that up and then start assembling the clutch back into it. So we'll be right back when we get that done. Let's do this gasket first. Okay, so this is all placed on here. Our guide pins are back in it. We've cleaned all the old gasket material out of it. I've just wiped all the old grease out of it. This should be ready to go. We can place that back on the motorcycle once we get the clutch assembled. Our clutch plates have been sitting for over 30 minutes, so we should be fine to assemble it. So
we're done with these then, right?
We are done with those.
So we'll just set those to the side. We need this.
Yep.
Should we try and save this oil?
I would like to save the oil. We'll probably just pull it out one at a time as we put them in the motorcycle. So we'll carry this whole pan over, set her down, and then we'll finish reassembling it.
Told me after I put my finger in there.
Darn right. We'll see you guys in a minute.
So what's first?
Now we're at the point where we're going to start assembling the clutch. And as we mentioned before, the very first clutch plate on here in our stack is the thickest. There is no inside or outside. It just has to be placed on, and obviously your grooves will line up with your spacers. There's first plate, and then steel plate. I think what I want to do though, just make sure I have oil on these as well before I assemble them, to make sure we don't have any issues. And put the next one out, it's just one after the other. Just stagger them one from the next.
Just like they came apart.
Alright, after that's all assembled, and Tony, could you pull in on the clutch for a moment? If everybody's wondering how these work, like I said, the springs are in here and they're forcing this back in to put pressure on this plate to get our friction to work, to operate, well, make the engine drive the rear end. Whenever we pull in the clutch, if you watch this pin here, go ahead and pull in on it. You had it in, okay?
That's in.
If you notice, it is moving in or out. Pull it in and out one more time. What it's doing is it's pulling this apart, and this is another friction plate here on this surface here, as well as the one on the back side of this mount. This pushing this out, which is letting these free spin from the steel plates that are connected to the crank in the center. So this can rotate freely since there's no pressure on it and the springs are not holding it together. So now we'll assemble this. now that these are just as snug, I will need a 1/2 inch to 3/8 drive. Okay, so got our adapter. Now we're going to torque it down to 7 foot-pounds. Verify it one more time. We're at 7 foot-pounds, and we're going to do the star pattern again. I like to click them like 3 times when I do them. There we go. There's our torque down screws. Let's pull on the clutch once. You should see this plate rise out. Yep, there we go. So our clutch is actually operating. You can literally see all the plates moving. If I were to hold those plates in, you could just see the plate itself would come out. So that should open it up enough that we should get our friction to release so we can actually drive and shift. So next step would be to place the cover back on it and start putting the bolts back in. Okay, now that they're all snugged down, hand tight, we're going to give it a little tighter. I don't know that there's actually a torque value on it. I just go to the tight, give them about a 1/4 turn. And I just try to do the star pattern again. Those are good. Now we go on to putting this cover back on. There's 3.5 quarts. If we need more, we'll take it out of that pan. Why is it not in the viewer at all now? Unless it's above it. Oh, it's at the top, Mark. It's good. It's good. Set her down.
All right, we got it all put back together. If you liked the video, go ahead and hit the like button. Subscribe to see whether the bike worked or not. In the next video, we'll let you know. Ring the bell so you get notified on it.
Comment, let us know if we did something wrong. I don't want to drive it and blow it up. But, yeah.
Share it with your friends. Maybe they'll let us know too.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.
Have a good night. Bye.